Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas and Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I sit down with my friend Bruno Gavino from Portugal, where we talk about digital marketing trends. I really enjoyed having this conversation. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I did having it. Please sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy this week's podcast. Morning, everybody. Rob Cairns here. I'm here this morning with Bruno Gavino, who's a digital marketer in Portugal. How are you today, Bruno?
Well, thank you for asking. I would like to start by thanking you for having me on your podcast. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So we were just talking before we came on to record the podcast. Times are tough right now. We have COVID. We're both still sitting at home in our home offices having this chat. You know, it's hard right now. How are you and your clients doing at this time, at this tough time?
Times are tough. I think there's a global change in perspective. Not only every one of us is dealing with this, being at home, working from home. A lot of us, it's our first time working at home. Some of our clients are working at home also for the first time. You have to have your own meetings in the middle of all the kids and all the other issues that usually are not part of your daily life. And that changes a lot of your perception. Everything becomes more, there's a bigger merge between your personal life and your professional life. And I think it's changing everything. In terms of like what's happening for our clients in terms of business, also we're finding some clients are changing a bit on their strategies. So others are like waiting to see how all of this evolves. It's something different because like no one can say, look at this model, let's do it like this, because no one has been here before. But then again, it's a new time and new opportunities to come up with creative ideas and be completely disruptive, try to think differently, because I like to say that this is like picking like when like race cards. It's like this is that card that comes in and makes everyone stop because there was an accident. Yeah. So now we're all at the same base again. No one knows exactly how the next lap's going to be like, and we can speed up together.
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing that's going on from what I've seen in Canada, and I know your client base is kind of Europe and the US, if I recall right, is people are starting to pivot. So we're seeing a lot of change where people who don't have e-commerce stores are finally waking up and saying, I need to do this. You can thank Jeff Bezos over at Amazon for that whole pivot, as far as I'm concerned. I'm listening to a really good podcast series right now between Walmart and Amazon and the differences there. I think a lot of clients are changing the way they do business. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we were all for the past years trying to realize where would the digital transformation come from. Would it be from the CEO or CTO? But no, it came from the virus itself. Yeah. Suddenly everyone had to jump in and become like a technology company and had to become prepared to have like a specific streamline for online sales. A lot of companies were already there, so they were all trying to do that for the last couple of years, but then others who didn't had like this super short window to speed up and go online and start selling online with all the problems that has, because sometimes selling online is obviously not just setting up your online store. It has a lot to do with everything from logistics to delivery. Everything became super complex in a very difficult time. So I think we're experiencing that at a larger scale. A lot of clients focusing more on e-commerce and online retail, trying to do most of the sales online. But also you can see clients changing from more of a long run strategy where they were like, for instance, they had like a strategy for search engine optimization, for instance, and they were like thinking ahead, thinking that they wanted to be relevant in 6 months or a year. But now they're like into more of a a paid strategy more on top of like performance, making sure that they got all the sales they could as fast as possible. Something else that we're witnessing is we have clients at very different speeds, obviously. So some industries are hardly impacted by this. So like everything related, for instance, with tourism, it's like hotels, car rental companies, all those clients, they're like taking it really hard.
Yeah.
And they are struggling with new ideas and new business models to turn around this problem. And others are thriving, like they're the ones who are selling consumer goods or like kids' toys online. They're thriving and their sales are off the roof. So it's this change in behavior and this change of the consumer is impacting the industry globally, but different verticals have completely different challenges.
Yeah, no question. We talk about tourism. My stepdaughter actually works for one of Canada's biggest tourism companies, a company called Flight Center, and needless to say, they're all at home right now just because there's nothing going on. I mean, tourism has been impacted in such a big way. And I think if you're in the cruise industry, frankly, you've got even bigger problems because I don't see anybody jumping on cruises or frankly going to resorts for a while. Part of the problem with the resorts is most of the resorts work on a buffet model for food. And we all know with COVID that buffets aren't a good thing. One thing you mentioned, you were talking about SEO and PPC, or pay-per-click, a little bit. So I do want to go there because we've seen a trend in the US lately that major companies, so we'll go to companies like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Nike, they've actually canceled their PPC ads to make a political statement because the politics in the US. And I was on a conversation with a client who's got a medium-sized business. They said to me, Rob, what do I do last week? And I said, you spend on PPC now if you don't care about politics, and he times it by 10. And he said to me, why would you do that? And I said, believe it or not, pay-per-click ads, Facebook ads are at an all-time low for cost right now. Do you have any thoughts on that or that whole mess?
Yeah, totally aligned with your thinking here. I think it's a good opportunity. What happens every time these massive companies come online and they bring all their marketing budgets into Facebook, Google, all the other ones.
Yep.
They kind of shift the price. What happens, like they put so much money in that they end up harming everyone else. When they're not present, I think it's a good opportunity for everyone else to be present. But then again, you have to have, if you're not like a super involved into politics, and if you're like at this moment trying to save your brand, trying to save your chain or whatever, I think it's an interesting moment to be to invest in these platforms. It's what we're witnessing is, once again, the average cost per click is decreasing in some industries, but also it's increasing substantially in others.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, like an industry that had like a super controlled cost per acquisition was takeaway. And people are takeaway, obviously all restaurants all over the world now became like takeaway restaurants, which is impacting costs substantially. It's this is like a small example of one of the areas where if you haven't started planning for digital marketing ahead, your cost of entering will be huge. So I agree with you. I think if you're not very focused on politics, and if you are just looking at the numbers and trying to think where to put the next dollar, I think I would go into a more hard sell strategy and more bottom of the funnel AdWords or Facebook ads or whatever PPC campaign that you feel like will bring you sales.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think what these businesses need to look at is even PPC, as we know, is a more short-term strategy than SEO, and it's getting harder. I mean, if you and I had $1 for every time Google changed a rule, we'd be rich men right about now. I have to tell you that. and it's funny because I was reading another article about Google My Business pages, and on GMB pages, Google's limited a lot of stuff that can be done during the pandemic. So there's a lot of that going down. And frankly, they're so inundated right now, they're not even getting back to people on a support perspective. Like it's almost like the Wild West right now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think particularly for small businesses who on their daily operation, they're not on top of these things,
Yeah.
and they sometimes neglect the importance of keeping all this information updated. I know that during these times, the information that you can upload is limited. And let's say if you have like a dental practice and you have to close during certain times, or you have a limit in patients because of the local regulation, all this information should be uploaded to their Google My Business to make sure that at least the moment that someone is deciding on that specific search, that information can be critical for the consumer to realize that we are all that we are all aware of what's happening, and that
Yeah.
the businesses are compliant with whatever regulation they
Yeah.
might have to implement.
Yeah, two of the big concerns here has been things like nail salons where ladies go in and get their nails done, or haircut places. And what I've seen is a lot of those industries are moving to even booking appointments online where they do it over the phone. And now they just say, go to our website, book our appointment. And you know, this is stuff they really should have done like years ago, but now they're starting to say, hey, we need to do it. I'll share with you yesterday. I go out for a walk every day, and I was walking by Canada's second biggest shopping mall, which is about 10 minutes from me. And I don't go in there at the best of times. I'm an Amazon guy, so you know it's easy to get stuff sent to my house, and even it is quieter than normal. So I think things are changing. What is the biggest website trend that your agency sees in the middle of all this shifting around? What's the biggest thing?
What is actually super interesting is the conversion rates are way higher than they have ever been.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the amount of traffic that we are onboarding to most websites is it's bigger, because I would say it's not. Most of e-commerce has actually experienced a decrease in overall traffic, but in terms of like the quality of traffic has improved substantially. People who are on the look to buy something, I think when they're getting into the websites, they're closer to conversion than they were before.
Yeah.
It takes less convincing. I think the consideration phase is shorter. And once again, I think people have more time on their hands now than they ever had,
Yeah.
which helps a lot. I think when they get into your website, they already decided. They probably read reviews. They're more informed than they were, so it takes a lot less convincing.
Yeah.
I think that's one of them. The other one I would like to stand out is the time on site is increased. Like I would say, even in industries decreasing in terms of conversion, time on site has increased. And it's a clear indication that people are moved online a lot of their times. A lot of the time that they were spending doing something else, now they spend online. And so that helps. A cool example that we have and sometimes discuss with the client, they have a furniture company. And furniture is like no one, I mean, people were using the website as a consideration, but they weren't buying anything there,
Yeah.
which is a good chair and a good desk, because people were sent work from home, but at home they don't have an office. Sometimes they're working at the kitchen table. So it's happening, it's exploding in the furniture industry, is like set up your own office at home. It's like numbers like I've never seen before.
Yeah, I was reading an article, and you guys have IKEA over in Europe, and we have IKEA here. IKEA's business and their office supplies have gone through the roof, apparently, and it's interesting the number of people that have been at home and remodeling. Like, you know, you look at our house, and we put a new mattress in our master bedroom, and we put a new sofa in our living room in the midst of all this. So I mean, there's all of that going on too, because people have all this time, so they're kind of looking at stuff. So you're right, they've shifted where they're spending their money. They're spending their money more on at home. Another article I read that said computer desktops were up for the first time in sales in the last 6 or 7 years versus tablets and mobile phones. So as a result, what I'm seeing a lot of is more non-mobile searches going on websites because everybody's at home.
Yeah.
You know, some of that. What is are you still seeing a lot of shift to e-commerce from a lot of your clients who don't have e-commerce, or?
I mean, I think the the speech has changed a little bit. When this started, everyone was going, let's go online. We need to fix this. We need to make sure that we're selling tomorrow.
Yep.
But I think now maybe we're all getting accustomed to the idea that the virus is not going to have one structural problems to solve. Will bring us back again to the root of marketing. It's like, who is my consumer?
Yeah.
And let's start with that. Okay, now that we know who our consumer is, then maybe we can build a store specifically for those consumer needs. I mean, it makes the first impulse is like, let's stop everything and go online. But then when you stop thinking to think about it, it should be part of your 5-year strategy and not 3-month strategy just to go over the virus. Because as you obviously are aware, it's setting up an e-commerce, making it profitable. There's like it's not something that can happen overnight. It's something that takes strategy, takes a very deep understanding of who your customer is, who's your target audience, how can you expand it, how can you convert it, because like the web is full with other offers and competition. So it's very important for you to give all the solid steps in a specific direction, much more than it was like in the beginning of the crisis. In the beginning of the crisis, everyone was just panicking a little bit and trying to fix problems that they couldn't fix for the past years in 2 or 3 months. I don't think that's happening right now.
No, I think people have calmed down pretty much. I mean, you know, in Canada, I think what we're seeing is people are more level-headed. They're not panicking. I think the businesses that we're seeing that are in trouble, frankly, were in trouble anyway. Some businesses are set up for disruption, the movie industry being the biggest one as far as I'm concerned. I'm not a big fan of going out to watch movies anyway, but Canada's #1 movie chain was set to be bought by a British conglomerate, and it all fell apart in the pandemic. And now there's, oh, it's your fault, it's your fault. There's lawsuits flying around like nothing. But to be honest with you, I think that industry's been set up for disruption for a long time. I think the real estate business, we're seeing $1 million homes being sold on virtual tours, sight unseen, which is unheard of. But you could see that coming. I mean, the real estate business has been, the whole brokerage model in North America has been set up for disruption for years. So I don't think the pandemic's really caused anything except move things up about a year, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it's shifted. I'm going to switch gears for a minute. There's 2 things that I wanted to sort of talk about. I'm a big believer. I was having this conversation with a good colleague last night, that the only 2 things that you actually own in digital marketing is, one is your website and the other is your email list. Do you have any thoughts on that discussion?
Oh, well, I think I love how you say it, because it's like because you have no idea how many times I told this to my clients. It's like, you need to look after your website because it's you're active. It's like the only thing. It's like a real estate thing. Picking up again. It's like, even not only it's the way you show yourself to the world, but it's also it's like the piece of land that is actually yours, because you can actually fight for more in search engines or whatever it is. Like, it's, if you have a position there, you kind of secure for the future. So it's a little bit, it's your little territory where you can actually be your own, you can do your own ideas and explore them like to the limit. And your email list, it's critical. And these days, it's actually something that it's working particularly well, is email marketing. Marketing and bringing clients in, especially if you've been building a good CRM and you know more about your customer base than actually just their name and their emails. If you know what they've been buying, or if you know what their interests are, or in the limit, if you know how connected they are with society, you will know that you can actually perform forget that a lot of people lost their main sources of revenue, and brands have also the responsibility, and have had the responsibilities over time to give some vision to people, to make sure that after whatever this is happening, we will all be here, and that we are thinking ahead, because we have that responsibility as marketeers to try to understand where the world's going, and to make sure that we will have a better world after all of us happening. So I think email marketing can be really, really powerful. What I think it's happening is a lot of companies are, because obviously they're struggling with sales, pushing into very hard sale emails, which I think sometimes are being don't have the same performance as they did before, like discount, super on top of discount, completely out of context. But other email marketing, if you start with something like a message that sometimes it's not just a sales message, it's like here's what our company is doing, here's how we see the future, here's how you see you as being part of our future, and then the sales pitch after that can be super interesting in reconnecting and building the engagement these people have with the brand and had before.
Yeah, it's so true. And I don't think hard sales even today, forget COVID, doesn't do what it did 20 years ago. I think where marketing is building that relationship. And sometimes some of the best clients can take 6 months to a year to build. And we need to recognize that. It takes time. And I mean, it's little things like, a lot of people take the effect with email marketing that you basically set it and forget it. So you pump out a newsletter once a week. You don't curate your list. You don't segment off your list. You don't do any of that stuff. Well, it takes work. And unfortunately, even email marketing is not a set it and forget it strategy at all. You have to segment off your list. You have to clean your list. There's all kinds of things you need to do from a corporate standpoint. And the more you do it, the better off your list will be. The other thing I've seen, even in my own list, since COVID started in March, I've added 4,000 people to my marketing list since COVID started, because people are looking for the right information to help them succeed right now. And that's really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would say that not only that in practice, but it's a very important time where all the best practices that we've been talking for the past years have to be put in place. Like, be positive in the way that you write things, be positive to your relationship and to your client database, the way you address your message, make sure that you are likable, make sure that the things you say resonate with your audience, not just like, don't send something that, okay, can be interesting for you, but is it interesting for them? It's also something very important. Sometimes also something we don't see is enough assertiveness. Okay, it's important to be assertive. The message has to be there, but it has to be concise, has to be direct, and has to resonate with each one of us. Yeah. It's also a very good opportunity to work on this engagement, as you were saying, because relationships are also always about understanding the other and not just focusing on yourself. I think we can all once again go back to this and do our homework and look at all of our newsletter and think, okay, am I doing this? Am I connecting, or am I just talking about my perspective on it?
So true. And the tip I would give any business owner out there listening is sign up to 5-year competitors' email marketing lists and find out what they're doing. And watch them and scrape. And if you're worried about being found out, create a Gmail account and just sign up and see what your competitors are doing, because a lot of guys that are doing email marketing are just giving up an opportunity, as far as I'm concerned, and that's a big problem. So what would you say going into the summer? We're halfway through the summer, actually. Are your 3 big things or takeaways that a business should be doing in terms of digital marketing right now?
Like in terms of big takeaways, I think the first one is the traffic that you already have. You should look into it very carefully. These people already are willing to spend some time on your website, so they should be taken care of. And taking care of them means looking at all your website metrics and trying to understand, okay, are these people spending enough time here? What is the information flow inside my website? What are the people looking? What are the people reading? Is there any valuable information that I can give them? Because I know a lot of times they're looking for information, and we inside our own companies, sometimes we have so much information that we could be sharing, and this information could be so valuable for our clients. Sometimes we forget that this is something very, very important. Second, I would build a little bit, I would focus on engagement on all platforms that you're in. Either it's email marketing, social media, or even the content that you're producing should be considering the other and should be considering your customer. The best way to get in front of your audience and to connect with the stakeholders of your audience is actually by building this relationship. I think it's very, very important to be that company right now. And I think it's a good opportunity because it's a moment where everyone in one way or the other, from personal life to business life, a lot of people are lost in the way that they don't know exactly what's the next step. So using this in a positive way in making sure that you have something to add here could be super, super, super interesting. And then I think, and the last one, I would say not very different from before this, but will keep being something for the future, is testing. It's like come up with a premise, try to understand if this premise is significant to your audience, and then test something. Are actually people interested in what you have to say by downloading an ebook? Or is it something like if you publish an article with the top 5 conferences that are happening online, is it something that people can respond to this? Try to understand them a bit better, try to understand what they're looking after, and get in touch with them. Something that I've been witnessing, which is very interesting, is the number of people interacting with bots, it's increasing substantially. So what's happening? So people are actually on the look for answers, which ties up to what you said. It's like the credibility of information, and information in itself is so powerful. So it's a good way to tie all of these three and to prepare for the next 6 months, because this is something, it's a trend that I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a company out of Boston, Massachusetts in the US called Drift, and you probably know them or don't know them. And they're a conversational marketing company, and they're very, very much big on bots, and they've gone that route. But I think it's a way to answer some simple questions without having to tie up a customer service rep, a CSR, or tie up a member of the company. And if the bot is set up properly, you can actually almost have your whole FAQ section, frequently asked questions, right in the bots. They say, okay, bot, what are your business hours? ABC. How do I get there? ABC. And the bot does it for you. So I think that's the value, because people are now at the point when they go to a website, they want an answer now. They don't want to wait for an email back. They don't want to fill out a form that says, we'll get back to you. People just aren't doing that anymore. It's really interesting.
It's really interesting. Totally agree. It's like, I think in this, for this case in particular, I think Google set the bar pretty high, because you go on Google, ask anything you want, and you will always get an answer. So people, I think, kind of are expecting this from everyone else.
Yeah. And the other big trend I see really is an increase with voice search. Voice search is becoming big. We all have, and I have to be careful what I say in this room, we all have that Amazon device that sits on our table, or the Google device, and I have both of them. So I have like a mixed environment at home. And I mean, how easy is it to say, hey, device, tell me the weather, or tell me where I can find this, or order me this, or I think we're seeing more and more of that, not just from a device perspective, from the devices at home, but we're also seeing it from the phone as well, where people are issuing voice commands to their phone.
Yeah, well, it's a huge thing. Like I think according to Google, it's 31% of all smartphone users used it at least once a week.
I do.
So it's like it's incredible. Also, the progression in natural language, the way that these algorithms are processing information, and how voice recognition systems, voice technology, and how it's well adapted to follow all of our everyday, like all of our day endeavors, and all of the way that we do small things.
Yeah.
It's becoming so immersive in our day to day that it's going to be it's going to be huge. It's already huge, and it's going to be much
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah. You
And
do a lot
something
of you do a lot of work in Europe. Of course, you're in Portugal. Has GDPR been a blessing for you guys? Has it been a pain for you guys? How has that kind of played out? And I've been reading a lot recently with Brexit going on, and when that's finalized, that's going to impact the whole digital marketing space in Europe. Do you have any thoughts on that?
GDPR has impacted businesses in I wouldn't say in a positive way. I think it made our life as marketeers a bit more complicated, especially in the lead industry, uh, which we are not exactly. It's not our natural client. Is not the lead market. We're more focused on e-commerce. But in terms of like the lead sector, like the lead acquisition sector, sometimes they used, as you know, not very regulated ways of getting leads.
Yeah.
And that obviously kind of made our lives a bit more difficult. In terms of GDPR for most businesses is I think like any other sort of regulation, in the first 6 months you need to adjust, and then moving forward the rules change and you play by those rules. I think these days it's not an issue anymore, and you can see that some of these regulations are expanding to other places in the world. Like also California now has their own specific GDPR, and some I was reading that like a variation of this GDPR might be implemented in Canada and other countries. Like regulation is something that it's here to stay. What I think companies all over the world can learn from Europe is it made things a bit more bureaucratic in the way that you can't release anything without making sure that you have the consent of people. And on the business side, it's a great opportunity for agencies, because you can talk to a lot of clients saying, okay, are you sure that you are compliant with all the regulation? Are you sure that every time someone deletes their record from your database, that everything actually goes away? It's a good opportunity for you to sell auditing to these companies and making sure that all this regulation is in place. But I think on a daily operation, make things slightly more difficult for things that we were doing, like expanding audiences, finding similar audiences, things like that.
No question. Like in Canada, you can't go out and buy a mailing list and just import it into your email platform. That's actually illegal. In Canada, we have what's called the Castle Law. So the Castle Law says you must explicitly allow yourself to be on that email list. So if you don't opt in and you can't prove people have opted in, so one of the biggest problems is you walk into a big retail store, a Fortune 500 store, and you fill out a form. Well, most of the stores are smart and send you back an email saying, can you confirm, because they need some tracking. Because if they get called to the carpet, so to speak, what happens is they say, well, the person put their email list down on a form and the government stands and says, so prove it wasn't somebody else doing it for them, and prove. So we've already gone down that road to some degree with email marketing in our country, but we've even talked about tightening up our rules. I'm not sure if it's good or if it's bad at this point. It's another level. You guys do websites. Let's go to the subject of website security, which is one of my most favorite or unfavorite topics, depending on the flavor of the day. We're all online. We're all seeing a more increase in hacks attempts. We all know the script kiddies are out in full force. Are you seeing an increase or a decrease in your agency, Bruno?
An increase in the need for website security?
Yeah.
Oh, are we seeing an increase, substantial increase? I think when you think about e-commerce, the payment layer, it's becoming less critical because all the suppliers are also becoming more proficient in the way that they're getting more difficult to attack with this
Yep.
double and third validation for each payment. So that makes it more difficult for this layer to be attacked. So it's easier for you. What I think it's still critical is the way that your website's API sometimes connect with third-party websites.
Yep.
That's something that's sometimes not very well taken care of. And if you look into, like, let's say a huge part of the industry has websites built on CMS platforms that we can't control everything that's behind. Let's say you have a website and then you put in like 5 or 6 different plugins. Each one of them will have been developed by a specific company. And sometimes it's very difficult to audit all the process and make sure there aren't any loopholes or there aren't any leaks in information. It's very, very difficult. Sometimes, as you know, it takes one wrong update to make a website super unstable. So that's something that it's a concern. What I think is happening with clients is more and more they're aware of this problem. And if on one hand they feel that they don't want to invest as much in a website, on the other hand they realize that sometimes building something up from scratch and making sure they control all the endpoints, that you control all the APIs, and you control all the information flowing in, it's an added value for you, and it's in terms of reliability and in terms of like security, you're way more protected. The third thing here would be the massive migration to cloud services. Also, is making our lives a bit easier, because all these platforms, like say Amazon Cloud or Google Cloud or any of these platforms, they have their own infrastructure and their own security infrastructure, which makes it's another level of complexity. But then again, sometimes you open the news and you realize that huge companies like Sony been hacked.
Yeah.
So,
one of the biggest problems is the big companies have been hacked don't always divulge it for months after the fact, and that's to me a bit of an issue. But the other issue is I see a lot with medium-sized businesses. They don't really worry about their web security until they've been bit, and then they find out the cost to clean it up is more than the cost to build that website in the first place sometimes. And then they kind of look at you like, and you say, do you have a backup? Well, my web host doesn't have a backup, and I don't have a backup. And we all know those horror stories, don't we? Like,
yeah, you do.
I've been there.
Unfortunately.
Being in Portugal, who's your web host of choice? Do you have one?
Most of our websites are hosted on Amazon.
Okay. So you guys have done AWS. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a and something else just to add to what you're saying, I think it's something we see every day. It's not only the attack, it's sometimes it's the consequence of that.
Yes.
Search engines, for them it's like a red flag when you're under attack. So you might obviously you can recover your website from a backup, but it can take months to get back on Google where you were. It's like because a lot of as you were saying, a lot of the times you don't even notice it, like unless it's months afterwards. So sometimes when you go back and try to roll back and get back to where you were, you don't know. You just notice that, okay, suddenly you found this, and there's a huge problem that you have to solve. It's not only just replacing the website, it's making sure that you delete all the like backlinks, making sure that everything is consistent, making sure that all of the other, let's say, sometimes you forget that you are giving your website is being mentioned on other websites. Sometimes there are partners, sometimes there are like your business clients, sometimes there are people really important to you. And you don't know, like when your website has been hacked and you have like you're now suddenly selling Viagra or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And all your clients have a backlink to you. So like you're like making them like have terrible, like like being impacted terribly as well. So it's like I agree with you. It's very, very important. Something that should be part of your checklist and should be revisited every few months.
Yeah, I think in our business, we do a lot of website security stuff, and especially with WordPress. And I think, honestly, it's a cost that a business owner just can't avoid. Like for the couple $1,000 a year, I think it's money well taken care of, because at the end of the day, I've even seen occurrences where major web hosts, one in Australia, one in England, A2 hosting in England or in Europe, they've had their backup servers hacked. So not only did the hack take out their shared servers, their hack took out the backup servers too. So when you get to that point, it's just awful. And then you say to the client, did your web developer set up a backup for you that's not tied to your host? And they say no. And I always say, why not? You know, and we've all been this route, right? You're laughing at me, but you know the story. It's just,
yes. It's,
and then the client, and then somehow it's your fault that the client's web developer didn't do what they were supposed to do. And, you know, and it's a vicious circle. So, and frankly, I've seen everything from targeted attacks to non-targeted attacks. I used to be involved with a group that did the Ontario Police Memorial, where we honored fallen officers. And you know, every year during the ceremony, there were targeted attacks at the website that was live streaming the event, and I could watch it on the server logs as it happened. I'd sit beside the media truck, and my friend and colleague would look at me and say, Rob, what are you watching? I said, look at this. And I'd have one of the AV guys from Toronto Police over my shoulder, and I'd say, see what's going on here? This happens every year at this time. And we're talking, in an hour ceremony, we're talking 200,000 hits.
Yeah, Jesus.
And it just happens. I mean, so the other problem about having your website brought down, as you know, is it impacts your reputation of your business. And that's the even more important thing, is what does it do to your reputation?
Yeah, and your reputation is not only your consumer, your client, but also the search engines, the bots, and like all the technology behind the web that it's looking at your website all the times. So sometimes, because you know, some of the attacks, they're not visible like for the consumer, but the backhand, they're like building pages. They're like visible to everyone else except you sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. So as we wrap up, is there any other thing you'd like to add about digital marketing before we?
No, I was just, I would like to say that I think these are very challenging times for everyone working in marketing, everyone who loves marketing and loves sales and loves customer behavior and how people react to things. I think it's a huge opportunity to be alive during this pandemic. I think it's also the opportunity to see and to witness the first pandemic that it's being broadcasted 24/7 online.
Oh yeah. That is the drawback to having 24-hour news stations and social media that doesn't shut up.
Yeah. And 6 billion experts on virology suddenly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like as long as you are able to distinguish information, I think it's a very, very interesting time to be alive, to be around here, and to try to look into people and say, okay, how can I, as a marketer, help you be more comfortable with this?
So well said. Bruno, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, can you share some links and your website address and your agency and all of that, please?
Yeah, well, if you want to reach out, it's codedesign.org. So it's just Google it. I'm sure it will show up. If it doesn't show up, just let me know, because I'll have to fire someone.
Yeah, and it won't be you, right?
It won't be me.
Thank you very much.
I would probably also step down.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. You have an awesome day.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I want to thank Bruno for joining me on this week's podcast. We really enjoyed having this great conversation, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. If you want to contact me, please tweet at me at Rob Cairns, or you can see our corporate website at stunningdigitalmarketing.com. You want to email me, vip@stunningdigitalmarketing.com, or you can call us at 416-624-7647. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and make your business succeed.